great to be here. Yeah, Leicester. We're back. Fantastic. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. I'm just so thrilled that you're all here. Anyway, yes, it is great to be back. And wow, what a year to be back in, you know. I was just enjoying being face to face with people at long last. You know, give people a bit of a hug if we're allowed to do that. It's just wonderful with what happened in lockdown. But then we are facing up to some huge challenges in the world, which we need to explore later. But I just wanted to kind of touch base on, you know, the full circle bit, really. I called it full circle because I don't know if you've ever done that little exercise. This is what my mentor told me to do when I was doing my, writing my memoir. She says, what you do is you get a little, you draw a circle. The older you are, the bigger the circle has to be. And you put a little arrow at the top and you think, how did I get there? And then you go round the circle and then meet yourself face to face, you see, when you get to the other end. Yeah, you do it, yeah. I bet you're all going to do it now and not listen to me because it's so interesting. But how, yeah, I'd say my first arrow has to be when I was born. Yeah, well, it's got to be everybody's, hasn't it? But this is a particularly momentous event for me because I was born in an unmarried mother's home to a white working class mum in 1953. So back in the day then, that was, you know, stigma upon stigma, really. And so I started off, you know, my beginnings were not very auspicious. So I had a lot of making up to do. And going around the circle, I'd have to say that, you know, going around, I think loneliness would be one of my arrows. This thing that wherever I turned up, I was a one-off. You know, wherever I went, I sort of had a lot in common with people, but I didn't quite fit at the same time. It made me very tolerant to ambiguity, to nuance, to confusion, to chaos, all of that stuff that maybe made other people feel uncomfortable. And you need that if you're going to be a revolutionary feminist, I can tell you, because you're going to be in some very uncomfortable places. So I would say that would be, you know, the loneliness thing was something that really kind of drove me. And of course, I think my third arrow would have to be Leicester. Because I think I probably turned up as a fully fledged revolutionary at Leicester University. Well, age 19. I was already definitely a women's libber. I was very into the Black Power movement, and I had an afro just like this. So, you know, a bit of a throwback at the moment. So I think Leicester gave me the platform on which to flourish, on which to be all of those things. And that's what was so great about it, that it opened up a lot of people. And what a time, you know, in the 1970s, there was a lot going on. You know, there was austerity, there was the miners' strike, there was a 3-day week, and there was the revolution in Chile and lots of, you know, Chilean students coming over totally traumatized and so on. There was the Black Power movement. There was the beginnings of the feminist movement. So what a time to hit Leicester, you know. So that was really, really important to me. And I suppose one of the things I did going on from that was to talk, I want to talk about my experience as an internationalist on, you know, going on VSO and then coming back and becoming an international facilitator and strategist in lots of different organizations. And of course, then you've always, on this arrows, if you've got any kids, that's the time to put them in, right? Because they'll kill you if they're not on your turning point arrows, right? So, yeah, I had a couple of kids, but I think it's not just sort of finding your kids and becoming a parent. For me, it was also finding a parent. And that's something that maybe not a lot of you share. But I think a massive spoiler here is actually about finding my dad and finding the other part of myself. That, you know, my long-lost African warrior queen inside. And I was searching for her, and finding my dad was really important in that circle. And I think that whole experience going around that circle was important to me. But there was one more arrow, which I'm going to talk about later, which is really the theme of my book, and that is to put all that together. What does that mean as a whole person? Because for me, I'm an intersectional feminist, and I think you have to rock up with all yourselves. You don't just have one identity. It's constantly shifting and evolving. And I'd like you to think, as we're going through this evening, what are your identities, plural, because you are many, many things. We are all many, many things. And it's how you hold those together that makes you whole as a person and makes you be able to rock up as your whole being. So let me find my flicker snicker, because let's start at the beginning. That's what we call it at home. What do you call this thing? When you are doing the television? What do you call it? A what? A do flicker. We call it a flicker snicker. Yeah, and whoever's got the flicker snicker has the power in our family, okay? So very much sought after. I've got it tonight, right? And no one else is having it. So this is the channel, and it's staying on this channel. So yes, International Women's Day, March 2020, at the Women of the World Festival, Royal Festival Hall. Little did we know what was coming. This is me with my new baby. Just had my book published, and it was 8th of March 2020, it went out to all the bookshops in the land, and here I am at the Book Love stall at the WOW Festival, Women of the World Festival, and it just hit the bookshops in time for everything to be locked down. So I could not get my hands on a copy of my book for love nor money. And yeah, that was a tragedy. I don't know why you're all laughing, because it hit me, it upset me. My son came flying back from Thailand and said, "You think you've got problems? I was in the middle of a world tour and I had to come back wearing a mask as well. So, you've got to cheer up and go online." So I did. And actually that opened up a lot of things. I even did a gig for Leicester University. It was like, I think nearly 100 people came, didn't it? Yeah, to that one, yeah. So I talked about my book online for the whole year, and then another year, more or less. And I think it opened up new audiences and new conversations with lots of people that I might never have spoken to before. People from Australia got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to come and hear me speak. So I think, in a way, it provides an opportunity. And I'm always saying that actually, life is full of difficult happenings, yeah? But if you can make the positive out of them, it takes you to some amazing places. And Henrietta was saying, oh, well, yeah, we didn't do much back in the day. I can remember I was 19 and I went to my very first International Women's Day celebration. And it was in Trafalgar Square, and there was just like a few of us all walking around in the rain while everybody shouted and jeered at us. And I thought, it's got to be better than this. International Women's Day has got to be better than this. And it's amazing how much people celebrate it now. And it's just absolutely great what Leicester is doing for International Women's Day. And in fact, it's like International Women's Month now, because the whole of March is busy with this stuff. And it's so good to see that we're celebrating, and that we're celebrating liberation, and that it's a political event. It's not just, some people seem to be sending lots of flowers to each other, but that's not what it's about to me. Although I always send my mum a bunch of flowers on International Women's Day, but they're always purple, green and white, which is the colours of the suffragette movement. You can see I've got my threads on here, special suit made, and this is my suffragette style, which is African style, purple, green and white, which is, it's about the meaning of what we've fought for and how far we've come, which is so important. I think there was something like 1% of all writers who are published in any one year in the UK are black, or even have books with black characters in. So it's a tiny proportion, and that proportion was not shifting, it was not changing. When you think of the way, over years and years, and when you think of the way the the diversity of Britain has changed, the profile of Britain has changed over the last, say, 20 years or so. You know, I was like a one-off in 1953. There was just like a handful of black kids, you know, mixed-race kids born then. But now there is such a vibrant, multiracial, multicultural population, and they're hungry for books. And the white publishing industry, because that's what we have to call it, the, you know, Penguins and so on, said, well, if there were any black writers and they were good enough, we'd publish them. We can't find them. So Valerie and the Jacaranda team, they did a national competition. And they said, any black writers out there, send us your stuff. And we will publish 20 of them. And they got something like 120 submissions from different writers. Poets and crime writers and, you know, novelists and memoirists like me, and we all sent our stuff in, and I was lucky to be one of the 20 in 2020. And I'm so thrilled with that, because I'm a person who likes collective action. Even when I'm writing, you'd think that was a solitary activity, but no. I got loads of friends who, and you can see what a fabulous bunch they are. We're all at the Hammersmith and Fulham Festival there. There's just a few of us there, but every genre you can think of, and really vibrant writers. And it just shows you how we're all there. It's about recognizing talent. It's about recognizing people's contribution. And that is a long, long time coming, particularly in the publishing industry. But I think we're taking it by storm. And we thought, oh my gosh, 20 in 2020 sounds like a catchy phrase, but what a year to be published. It was, you know, literally lockdown. Who is sabotaging this wonderful idea? But actually, it was an amazing year to be published in many ways, because the world was upside down. Practically, the whole world was under house arrest, really, when you think of it. And what did they want to do? They finished, you know, watching Netflix. People wanted to read. You know, the number of books that people were reading was soaring. And I think the fact that everybody saw George Floyd being murdered in lockdown, you know, and they witnessed that, and Sarah Everard, you know, the minute women got out of lockdown, that happened. I think people wanted books that dealt with this, dealt with inequality, addressed race, addressed gender and sex inequality. And so I think that we were making that kind of contribution at that time was a really wonderful thing to me. I feel that, you know, sometimes the time is wrong, but it's right at the same time. So I think we're all making the most of being out of lockdown there, as you can see. Oh, I keep pointing it at the screen. Yeah, okay. It's funny how I pointed at you and that works, right? But anyway, that's how. Anyway, I tell you what I did. Just before we went into lockdown, Audible rings me up, yeah, as they do, you know, and says, how would you like to read your memoir for Audible so people can listen to it? And I was very excited about this. And a lot of my friends were saying, especially writers were saying, oh, you don't want to do that, you'll lose your voice. I'm losing my voice now. And it's very hard, you know, we're writers, but you see, I'm the other way around. I'm a speaker, yeah, in case you haven't noticed. And so writing was a real struggle for me. I wrote my book in my garden shed, and sometimes I would just get stuck. I got so frustrated thinking about, what is my voice? How does a 60-year-old mixed race woman sound? There aren't many of us. What's the model? And sometimes I used to just pump up the music and dance. I'd have Aretha Franklin, Tina Turner, dancing around the shed, shouting my head off. Okay, sometimes more dancing got done than writing in any particular day. But yeah, I finished it, and it's long. But I went in there, and of course the first thing is, for those of you who've already read the book, it's quite a long book. And I rocked up there, feeling famous to Audible, and said, where's the cast? And they said, you're it. And I said, well, there's loads of people in my book. There's people with all sorts of different accents. There's some kind of cultural appropriation. I can't take off a Scotsman. She'll get lynched or something. And they said, well, you're going to have to give a hint of an accent, because here's the thing. If you're writing a book, there's punctuation. There's something called punctuation, right? But if you're reading a book, there's no punctuation in it. So how do they know? Your book is full of dialogue. How do they know when one person's finished speaking and another person starts, So you have to, you can't say so-and-so rocked up in their thick Scottish accent and said this or that, So you have to do a bit of it. So I panicked. I was running around to my hairdresser saying, can you teach me how to speak Jamaican patois in 24 hours, But anyway, I got into it in the end. I thought, I'm going to give this a go, I'm going to give this a go. So I did 21 accents. And of course, you have to remember there's the narrator accent as well as your child voice, your adolescent voice. I had the voice of everybody. That's how I wrote it. That all the way through, I spoke in my own voice. And it's all in the present tense, right? Talk about, give yourself a challenge. So I had about 4 different accents, 4 different ways of speaking. Forget about the cast, I was doing Tanzanian, I was in East African, South African, West African, all over the UK, lots of Irish in there, Germans, everything, right? Indian. And there was one accent that I just couldn't do. I don't know if you'll know what it is, but I bet you'll go, oh, yeah, that is difficult. Leicester? No. It was Dutch. You tried doing a Dutch accent. I was in there with a whole cast from, with Miriam Margolyes. Yeah, no, Margoyle's her name is, isn't it? I'm just name dropping now and I don't even know how to pronounce it. But anyway, she was in there with a whole range of cast in the Audible, and she said, oh, my boys, they're doing acting in this play, and they're good at a Dutch accent. They were coaching me. I couldn't do it. In the end, I said, look, I tell you what, I'm going to ring up Jacaranda, because when you do Audible, any of you fans of Audible here? Yeah. Well, when you do Audible, you have to have word for word what it is in the book. Yeah, so you can't change a single word. And so I rang up Jacaranda and said, I want to change a word. They said, look, we're going to publication. For God's sake, what is it now? So I said, there's just one word. I want to say, said Lars in his thick Dutch accent. I want to change that to, said Lars in his near perfect English. And they said, why is that? And I said, don't ask me, just don't ask me. But anyway, I got away with that. Page 200 and whatever, you'll see it, yeah. So, but it, getting your tongue around those accents was an amazing thing. And I think when you write a book, for those of you who are writing, we're all writing our memoirs. Secretly, you are, aren't you? I know you are. So just here's a tip. Don't do too many alliterations, because if you have to read them on Audible, they're a whole load of tongue twisters, right? So don't do that. And also make sure you don't have too many accents in it, because that can be really, really difficult. And this is what the story was about, really. There's my mum in the unmarried mother's home, probably the only existing photograph of it, and of the two of us together. My mum and me in the unmarried mother's home, 1953. And I think her courage, inspired me. I thought she never wanted to give me up. And when you think about some of the exposure now of what was happening in the laundries in the 50s and 60s, right up to the 70s, really, in Ireland, for example. And some of, there were mass graves found in some of these orphanages. And many, many young women of my mum's age, she was 19 when she had me, were forced to give up their kids for adoption. Particularly if you had a mixed race kid, that was pretty difficult. And she absolutely refused to give me up. Even when her family said, you can't come home unless you give the baby up. She was disabled, so it was really difficult. My dad had gone home to Ghana, and she was on her own. And I just felt that her courage is so monumental, really. I can't imagine what that would be like now. As women, we have so many choices, and when we're talking about how far we've come, we have a lot of choices over this. But then, you know, it was either a dangerous backstreet abortion or have the baby and have it taken away. So I think at least we can say that there are more choices open to us, and she chose to keep me, which was amazing. And eventually my family relented, my working class family relented, and I was taken back to Battersea. And let's have a look. Oh, yeah. And here's my granddad, that I used to call Dad, 1955. And what I learnt from Granddad, with our dollies there, socialism, anti-racism, and anti-fascism. The backdrop to my childhood was just immediately post-war. And a lot of our family was traumatized through having lost people during the war and being evacuated. And it was both seen as a very wonderful time of camaraderie and solidarity, and a traumatic time. And I heard a lot about first seeing the reels of the Holocaust on the in the cinema. So I really felt war was very present and very possible. And I was scared that the Nazis would come for me because I knew they didn't like people who were different. So all through my childhood, I had this fear of that and fear of fascism. But my granddad was a communist, and he taught me, and a very active trade unionist, and he taught me the pride of being working class. And he said, people may tease you about your colour, but you are working class, and you need to be proud of that, and that's who you are. So I really, in a sense, I already had this whole backdrop of being, of identity and how important identity was. But I think one of the things that happened to me, I must have been about, 2, 3 there? When I was a little bit older, I want to read you something from the prologue. Something happened to me. When, you know, I had this identity as a working class kid, but I think something happened to me on Clapham Common, which really changed my, you know, that's definitely got to be one of the little arrows on my circle. I was on the common with my auntie. It was November, very raw and cold, and she was taking me on the swings, and then she took me home for my tea after school. So this is what happened. It was around 5 o'clock when we finally started for home. The bare trees fringing the common dissolve into dark, spiky shadows in the dusk. There's a dull sound of traffic coming closer as yellow lights appear, one by one, in the street and in the flats across the main road. I hate the cold. I can feel Auntie Belle's warm hand clasping my numbed fingers through my woolen mitten. In the foggy half-light, I can just about make out a family group moving slowly across the grass ahead of us. As we get nearer, I can see they are wearing the strangest clothes, long robes and trousers, and scarves and jackets and hats to keep out the late autumn chill. And I can see glimpses of their clothes, red, gold, and blue. The woman is wearing a green and gold headscarf round her head, like a turban. They stand out in the fast-fading light, like a flock of brightly coloured birds. The smallest bird breaks away from the group and runs towards me. A little girl, about 4 years old, the same age as me. She has dark skin and black fuzzy hair, like mine. We stop and stare at each other, spellbound, rooted to the spot. A sudden shock of connection, of recognition. I know you. Kumba, Kumba. I think it was Kumba, they called her. Something like that. Kumba ran off to join her family, and they moved across the common and out of sight. It all happened so quickly, I can't believe what I've just seen. I tried to run after her, but Auntie Belinda holds me back. We have to go home now, she coaxes. Your mum will be back from work soon, it's getting dark, and Nan will have tea ready. tea time. It always interrupts something really important, just at the wrong moment. I have stumbled on a secret. I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one in the world. There are other others. And more than that, coloured people sometimes come in whole families. Mum and dad and 2 children, not just one-offs like me. I feel strange, excited, scared, shocked, all at the same time, but somehow comforted. And I think I was 4 when I realised I realised I was different when I was conscious. But that recognition of a young girl, because of course, you know, the people I saw on the TV were adults, if I saw any black people at all, very often in the civil rights movement or being gunned down in the streets of Soweto, you know, or Sharpeville or something like that. So actually to see somebody who was my age in a family context was so powerful for me. And growing up, I didn't have any contact with my father. I didn't know anybody who was like me. All the books that were all of, you know, little white kids, you know, Lucy Atwell drawings with all these little cherry-cheeked cherubs in. I don't know anybody who's, back in the day, that's the sort of thing we had to read. The only time I came across any black figures was Enid Blyton's Gollywogs. Terrified the life out of me. I tell you, I'm totally traumatized by that. But so I was kind of like in a world which, it was like being an alien, dropped on an alien planet. And I think not only did I not see myself, but other people saw me, and they saw me in a certain way, which I think was really difficult. This is me with my new scooter. I was so proud of that scooter. I loved it. And in those days, back in the day, there was very little traffic, and we were allowed to go out on our own. So I was at my house, and I was just about to go right the way down the end of the road. You see, it's quite a long road, to visit my cousins. And when I was out on the street, of course, there's no adults around, and that's when you were most vulnerable and open to attacks by other kids. So I just want to read to you another little bit here. Here I am on my scooter. I don't know why, but back in the day, it always seemed to be really hot summers. You know, I used to go black in the summer, you know, even more black. So here we are, it's a baking hot day. A heat haze shimmers over the tarmac road, and the sun burns the back of my neck. There's not a soul about, apart from those boys hanging around on the corner again. They always call me names: Woggy, Darky, Blackie, Chocky, Coon, who's been rolling in dog's muck. How many names have they got for me? My tummy tightens. I try and scoot faster, but they call out those nasty, hateful things just the same. I lose my balance, trip up, fall over, and now they're laughing at me. I dust off my scraped knees, suck the graze on my hand. Here, where's your dad? You haven't even got a dad, have you? Yes, I have. His name is Victor. He's not your dad, he's your granddad. I know that, but I call him Dad anyway. I wobble off on my scooter again, eyes blurry with tears. Why do they pick on me for no reason when I'm minding my own business, enjoying my new scooter? All of a sudden, someone points out that stain on my skin, my fuzzy hair, and then everything is spoilt. I feel ashamed, angry, stupid, different, that there's something wrong with me. And I think that childhood experience, and of course, you know, it happened on a daily basis, you know, that whole sort of, and even when it didn't happen, you were wondering, people were looking at you, and I'm thinking, are they going to say something? So it makes you as a child hyper alert and hyper, you know, hyper wired up all the time. And I think that was something that really I had to live with as a kid. And I felt this burning sense of injustice. You know, from that age, I thought, this ain't fair, and I'm going to do something about it. So my mum got married when I was 8, and we moved to Surbiton, which is even whiter. So what was she thinking? Anyway, I was still there at school, and got all this racist stuff, right? So I thought, I'm going to fight back. and I thought, I'm going to tell my story. That's how you fight back. Because everyone was saying, where do you come from? Why are you a different colour from your parents? And, and why don't you go back home? And so on. I just was so confused. I had so little information. So I decided to write my one and only play, which was called Why I Am Brown. And I performed it in front of the class at school. And actually, when you come to think of it, this was 1961 or something. I was quite enlightened, church school. They say, okay, you've got to play, put it on, in front of the class. And I got my some of my schoolmates to play my disappeared dad, and they wouldn't let him black up his face for some reason from the art class. So he said, your dad's a darkie. How am I going to make my skin look dark? But anyway, we had to pretend, yeah. And they had, my mum was pregnant, so they found a cushion, and Sarah stuffed it up her jumper. So we did it as real as possible, And I had to make a lot of it up, I have to say, because I had very little information. My mum didn't want to talk about it much. I think, she was just surviving, in a difficult circumstances. So I just had to make a lot of it up, and I said I was a princess, and, my dad was a king, and he was going to come and get me and all that. Well, that was the bit that turned out to be true, but anyway. So I think that's one of the things that I've always felt, that if you tell your story, if you know your backstory, and one of the things it taught me was, if people are shouting at you, have a dialogue with them. Explain it. It doesn't always work. Sometimes they shoot you. But, I think it's worth a try. And I felt that I kind of shifted things a bit. In my childhood and in that particular class anyway. We moved around all over the place. I was having to tell my story over and over again. We went to Stafford and then to the wilds of Norfolk, honestly, with my stepdad's job. So I was literally moving away from the multicultural population of the UK as it was growing, and going into all these white spaces. So I got used to that, and I got used to telling my story. And I think that was really important to me. So by the time I arrived at Leicester, I bet you were waiting for this bit, weren't you? By the time I arrived in Leicester, look at that, I haven't changed a bit, have I? I think I was pretty much a, fully fledged revolutionary. I discovered feminism, I discovered black power in a hairdresser's while people were giving my first afro and my first spliff. And I think by the time I got to Leicester, that was the platform that I had to kickstart everything. It was great. And I really got involved in the whole thing, the women's lib and the anti-apartheid movement. It was really, really exciting. And we went to all these conferences. No, back. Which way? Oh, hang on. It's not, my flicker snickers, not flicking. So next one, the afro I was at. And then the next one, please, Steve. Lovely, there I am at Margate, NUS conference, with the delegation and leading the delegation. And the next one, please, Steve, I think, here we go. This is me with Derek Moore, who is the vice president at the time when I got elected. And there's Chancellor Sir Alan Lloyd Hodgkin. And I did one of these pick and mix degrees. Which was very famous back in the day. Combined arts, you could do combined arts or combined science. And if you did combined arts, you could literally go around to every department that you liked. Well, I'm exaggerating a bit, but I did about 7 different subjects. I was in the English department, the history department, and the phenomenology of religion, sociology, politics. I did the whole lot, and I did little incremental pieces. But I tell you what, if you're a student politician, that is absolutely brilliant, because you know all the students. When it comes to getting the vote out, you're in every single department, you see. They thought I was just interested in everything. Well, I was, but it was also a fantastic space to be in, you know. Plus, I stayed in hall, so I had the students in hall and I could bring out the vote. And that was what was so fantastic, because the year that I decided, the year that I was going to run for president, I think I was the only woman running. And there was this guy who was supporting the National Front, which was, you know, it was a fascist organisation. And in fact, they were very big in Leicester. And there was a big population of Asian people in Leicester from all over the Asian continent and also Africa. They were, I think, the first council members that got voted in the 70s from the National Front. So they were a very serious threat. And this guy from the Students' Union, he said that he supported the National Front and he was running for election. So all the socialist parties and the Labour Party and the Young Liberals and the Conservatives, they all came to me and said, look, you're the person to beat this guy, because you're not only are the opposite of what he believes in, you look like you are as well. So, so they got me as the only candidate. And this guy then, it was doing a piss take really. He just walked off and said, oh, I'm not standing anymore. So I actually got in and I said, well, what about it, comrades? Do you still want to fight? And they said, no. You know. So I then became Student Union president, and I thought, how do I be a different kind of leader, you know, just like all the boys have been doing it before and doing it in a certain way. And I learned very, very early on that I wanted to be a different kind of leader, an inclusive leader, somebody who made space for other people. That leadership, good leadership to me, is how much space you make for others to come into the whole space. And the first speech I ever made, I have to read this bit. If you've heard it before, I don't care, because I want to hear it again. This is my favourite bit, right? Now, where am I? That's my school diary. There's a lot of this book, you know. Okay, yes. Yeah, don't leave it too long to write your memoir, because it goes on for pages. Okay, so anyway, here I am in the middle of this amazing speech, right? And the rugby club, if you remember the story, the rugby club, the night before, there's a rag week, so they had done what they call a grapple and strip, which, for those of you who've never been to a grapple and strip before, is female nude mud wrestling. I don't know why I can't say that. I always stumble over that. But anyway, we stumbled over the mud. We all went down there to complain, and with our placards, all got covered in mud and got thrown out. And got sworn at by the strippers, who said, we're trying to make a living and you're sabotaging it, right? So I thought, what you have to do is dialogue with people. Now, the radical feminist said to me, don't you go in there and talk to those men. You know, we don't want any patriarchal institutions like the Students' Union. We'll go home to my place and think about it. But I thought, no, I'm going to do an emergency meeting. And it was called This House. Now, the motion was, this house is against sexism. Well, sexism was a new word at the time. Nobody knew what it meant. It had just come over from America. I think everybody saw the first 3 letters and thought, this is going to be good. Sex. And of course, there was no internet at the time. So this is, you know, what we did for entertainment. It was wonderful. So they all turned up. And there was something like 800 students. And actually, we have with us tonight Felicity, who actually took the minutes at that meeting. So I can't actually make this up. It's true, isn't it? Most of it. Yeah. So she was there. Okay, so I'm in full flood. Now, you rugby club, I jab my finger at the balcony, because they're all up there, the rugby club, fresh from their strip show. You may argue that you have the right to have strippers in this place because you are members of the Students' Union. Just because it's for charity, you think you can get away with anything during Rag Week. Shame on you. Think about the women here last night having to earn their living as strippers because they don't have the same career choices as men. Why the hell would you want to take your clothes off for the rugby club if you had an alternative at the same rate of pay? Another roar of approval from the crowd. Nobody pays for us for streaking across the pitch stark naked, counters the rugby club captain, Chris Marlowe, grinning broadly as his teammates clap him on the back. Well, we'd pay not to see your ugly tackle, Mr. Marlowe, someone rescues me from the audience to hoots of laughter. Anyway, it allows me time to recover. You think it's just a bit of fun to shout off, off, off when a woman comes up here to speak. Honestly, I've had much more hostile audiences than you. You know, these people, they wouldn't let you open your mouth. They just start shouting at you if you're a woman before you'd even got onto the platform. And so I said, sexist, call yourselves revolutionaries, socialists, rebels. Sexism is the deadly weapon used by our oppressors to divide us. Is the Students' Union on the side of the oppressors, or do we support women's liberation? Another huge roar goes up from the audience. They know whose side they ought to be on anyway. But I haven't finished yet. This motion will make sure this kind of thing never happens again. That when we women walk in here, we will be listened to, taken seriously, treated with respect. We deserve that every bit as much as you men do. We're fighting for our freedom. Are you with us? I urge you to vote for this motion and banish sexism from our union forever. A sudden surge of energy and elation courses through me as I clench my fist above my head. There's a fraction of a second's pause, and then, yes, everybody is up on their feet, clapping, shouting, stomping their approval. I've gone well over my 3 minutes, but the speaker has lost count. He just shrugs his shoulders. He can see there's no stopping me. The audience is on my side. Speeches against? Abstentions? He asked when the cacophony has subsided. No, thought not after that performance. Nobody would dare. Anyway, let's go to a vote. All those in favour, raise your hands. And all the hands are shooting up. I can see the crowd spilling in through the door and out into the foyer. They've got their hands raised as well. Carried, NEMCON, bang goes the gavel. And I turn round to Felicity, who is taking the minutes in her usual place on the platform to the speaker, next to the speaker, and she grins at me and writes, standing ovation, loud and sustained applause in the red minute book. We won. So that was like, gave me a taste for how you can talk to people who are against you and get them on your side. And I think that's what I've tried to do in my career ever since then, and to hold that dialogue. And I was very lucky. Let's see if this works, shall we, Steve? Otherwise, it's over to you. Oh, yes, okay. I was very lucky that I was able to do that for the rest of my career. Here's my favourite author and feminist activist and academic, Angela Davis. She says, you have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time. And I think that's what I've tried to do ever since then. And, oh, here we go. This thing. Okay, right. And so straight after Leicester, I went to Tanzania on VSO. Really well landed there because Nyerere was in power and he was organising a socialist revolution in the heart of Africa. It was amazing. I met the man himself and I got a context in which, you could have a young country fresh from colonialism and try to reconstruct it. I mean, it was, I write about how difficult that was, but I just felt that man had so many amazing ideas, totally transformational. That's got to be on my arrow and my magic circle. And that enabled me to put my values into action. I set up my own business in 1995, just came back from the Beijing conference. People, if you speak to old feminists, they'll tell you about the Beijing conference. It was a United Nations conference, 50,000 delegates in the NGO forum, and it transformed a lot of people's lives. So I came back and thought, right, I'm going to go freelance, set up my own organisation called Anana Development, and put my values into action, which is participatory facilitation, creating a brave space and a safe space for inclusion, intersectionality, diversity. I get people together who don't agree with each other or who are at different multi-sectoral organizations, and we grapple with some of the real fault lines in diversity and try to create a space where we can understand each other, because from my point of view, a lot of the problems that we face are systemic and structural, and that we're fighting in a very small space with lots of people who don't have rights, and we want to change that. So it's about building solidarity, and it's about building the understanding between us, telling the story in a way, and fun, of course. You've got to have fun, haven't you? And what's it? Oh, yeah, here we are. So you think that was all enough, and I had a baby and a partner, and I had this fabulous career, and I went all over the world, and you'd think that was enough. But as you know, there is never enough for me. I want more. And so I thought, what do I want more? I want to see my dad, really. I was 37. I thought, it's time I saw my dad. It's got to be a burning thing for me. I ended up not being able to survive. I just crashed totally, nervous breakdown, sitting on the pavement with the down and outs, drinking lager. I just couldn't hold it together. And a really close friend of mine who was Ghanaian actually traced my dad, and I went to meet him. This is our very first meeting. We'd only known each other 20 minutes, but we look like each other, don't we? Got the same smile. And I felt that was a connection which I needed to have. And it's about identity is never fixed. You think you're one thing, and then you suddenly realize you're also another. And you've got to go find that and anchor that. And that was my first meeting with him in 1990. Same year as Mandela walked free, and 6 months after the Berlin Wall came down. I felt that the things that I'd fought for were just changing, you know, like the world changed. I thought I was a woman without a dad, and that the apartheid regime was, we were fighting, but it was forever. And I was born into a Cold War situation. And all of that seemed to change. And I think, let's hold on to that, people, tonight, because we're coming up against some dark days. But things do change. You just got to hang on in there. The thing is, you see, I'm too heavy-handed with this. I've got to... Here we go. Right, okay. That's that. Okay, yes. Here we are. So not only did I meet my dad, but I got 31 first cousins and aunties and uncles, and they took me down to my village, and I connected with these kids. They're wonderful. We started raising money for a school, and we're putting street light in and all of that. It was family to family, my friends and family in the UK, and we'd go out there and, and help out, and it was fab. And I wanted to, can I just give you a little bit of a taste of how that was? Let's see if I can find it. Have I got the, no, it's, okay, here we go. They took me down to the village for a naming ceremony, right? I lucked out, I tell you people, I lucked out because, of all the places I could have chosen to have had a long-lost father from, turns out it was a matrilineal society, right? So I've got queens, warrior queens, going back centuries. Who would have guessed it, that I've got the blood of a warrior queen inside me? Anyway, they were so impressed with, I don't know why, but they said, yeah, you got on a plane and came all the way out here and found your dad. They were really impressed with this story, and they said, okay, we are going to give you the name of the warrior queen who's founded our clan, and her name is Esuantsiwa, and she single-handed rode out into battle and saved the tribe from annihilation from the Ashanti. And she did it without firing a shot. She did it through negotiation. I thought, that's me, that's my girl. Anyway, they decided they was going to give me this name, Esuantsiwa. So They drag me from the stool. We're all dancing and singing, and they're pouring libation, and I've got this new name. Oh my God, I was really made up. They drag me from the stool and whirl me around with black and white wrappers twirling above my head, women ululating, men clapping, children laughing. And my aunties treat me like a baby, passing me from lap to lap, and then whisk me up onto the floor again to dance. And they're treating me like a baby because usually the naming ceremony happens when you're 8 days old. Well, I was 37 years too late. But anyway, they did their best. And when everybody congratulates me, I respond in Fanti, right? We didn't know you could speak the language. I can't. It's coming from somewhere inside me. A powerful energy. I just know how to respond, like speaking in tongues. The next morning, I can't speak a word of it. And tomorrow we will take you to our village to meet the rest of the family, says Dad. I'm living through an extraordinary time in my life, taken in, embraced and cared for in this new family, with genuine affection and human warmth. The ritual and traditions are not solemn or staid, but joyous, chaotic, full of spirit, full of meaning. Everything happens in the right order. Everyone knows what to do and sees it is done properly. Sometimes magic happens. You can't explain. And I think it's that feeling that feminism for me and liberation and equality and anti-racism is not just a theory and it's not just a practice, it's an emotion. And it comes from really deep inside. And I remember one of the most amazing things I did was to do a strategic plan for my work. I was invited to do a strategic plan for 150 Buddhists in Udaipur, in the middle of India, which is, I mean, you're probably thinking like I did, well, I thought Buddhists thought time was an illusion, but no, they wanted a 5-year strategic plan, you know, with timings and everything. So they flew me out to in middle of India, and they said, right, here's your conference hall. And it was the inside of a temple, right? So there's your flip chart, there's me, and there's this massive statue of a Buddha standing there, golden statue, looking down on me, you know, all serene, like this. And I thought this was absolutely amazing. 150 Dalits, who are the most oppressed people I've ever met in the world, but they were so full of spirit and laughter, and they translated everything I said, and they wrote it on a flip chart next to mine. And there were times when people were laughing. I'm thinking, what are they laughing at? But they were laughing at the joke that I'd made, you know, just a few seconds before. But there's a time delay because of the translation. But once I got used to that, I thought I was going down quite well. And then towards the end of the day, there's 20 women there who were stone breakers, and they talked about how when they went to work, they had to run the gamut of people who would attack them and rape them, and they cut stones all day and in the burning sun. And she formed a trade union with these women, and they used to sing these amazing songs. You know, when you get that level of harmony of all these women's voices, oh, it was bringing me to tears. And I went outside because I thought I've got to have a break here, because when they were singing during the break. And I met the woman who led those women outside on the path, and we just, you're going to make me cry now. We just held each other and cried. I didn't know her language, she didn't know my language, but there was a kind of international sisterhood there, which is really deep within. I had so much respect for her, and I'm so lucky that I'm able to do that kind of work. And I count myself incredibly fortunate because of that. Now, I've lost my Filicusnicker. Oh, here we go. Okay, right, okay, don't panic. Shall I go forward? Yes. Actually, you get to wear some fabulous threads, you know, in this job. Because I got promotion when my dad died. I got promotion to Queen Mother of Development. Any Ghanaians here? Oh, thank goodness, because I'm going to say something in Fanti and they'll tell me I pronounced it wrong. Anyway, it's Ohem Nkonswa Ohema, which means Queen Mother of Development. And so that's my daughter there, who is now just started out as her career as a doctor, medical doctor at the local hospital. And it taught me a different kind of leadership style. And in a sense, it was a reflection of the kind of leadership style that I think I developed at Leicester, which was, about shared leadership. And it's about, leadership with the queens and the chiefs. And what is interesting about Ghanaian leadership is that because it's a matrilineal society, the queens have a lot of power. And it's servant leadership. So it's what you can do for your villagers, what you can do for your people. So you have to work really hard. Yeah, and there's a job description. If you don't perform, then people want to know about it. But the great thing is we're now an all-women team because the chief of the village died last year, and the new chief is a woman. Now, that's the first time they've ever had, in hundreds and hundreds of years, a woman chief of the Fanti. So now they've got a female queen and a female chief. And I said, wow, I am really very lucky. And they said, well, on the other hand, because you've been so influential in the village, these things, happen for a reason. And so we're a very tight team, me and the chief. It's fantastic to have a female chief. And again, I think it gives us hope. You can change the rules. Just because this hadn't happened before doesn't mean to say it can't happen again. Now, I need more. Yeah, I got my African identity. I became a queen. And these massive spoilers. You don't need to read the book now. Yes, you do. Yeah, because there's jokes in it. And this zebra question. I used to dream about zebras a lot when I was a kid, and I didn't realize why. But it's obvious, isn't it? How do you identify black or white? And there's part of me that is, I can be my father's daughter, I can be my mother's daughter, but there's a part of me that isn't the same racial profile as either of my parents. I have a different racial identity, and no amount of talking to them can help them to really understand and have my lived experience. So the zebra question, it comes up a lot. And then I met this lot. Yeah, finding my tribe. Showing up as your whole self with all your contradictions and multiple shifting identities. Mixed race activists. Yeah, this is the next chapter with Susan Dale and Katie Massey, both fantastic writers. And we were being filmed for Jacaranda. Just as we'd come out of lockdown. So that was really exciting, and I would say that I can hold all of those identities. I can be a mixed race, working class, socialist, black queen of Africa, and I can be a warrior queen, but I can also be a person who holds people who, in a space when they have things that they need to share and when they have differences of opinion. So I think that sort of experience, and when I am in a room full of mixed race activists, and I tell you, I didn't meet them until quite recently, maybe a few years ago. I walked into the room and I cried because there are lots of places you can call home, and that was the one I hadn't yet found, and I found it with them. And we share a lot of things, and oh yeah, that happened to me, and I'm always thinking, is it me, or is it, and you just suddenly realize you can make those connections. And it's terrific. There's a lot of searching, we're all searching for, to be at peace inside and resolve our contradictions, but I think contradictions are great. Holding them is what gives you fire, what gives you life, really. And 100 years of change. Yeah, I like change. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. But I think we need to embrace it. That really speaks to me. to be part of that celebration of change for Leicester University. And boy, has it changed since I was here. You know, they're just a handful of black students. They always used to sit on the same table in the Students' Union canteen. There's all male apart from me. I'm sure there are others, but you know, those are the ones that hung around the union. And now I think Leicester is one of the I think you've got the biggest population, well certainly the most diverse population of students on campus, over 50%, which is joyous and exciting. And it's great to talk to the new students who come along about, you know, about activism and about identity and about imposter syndrome. And oh my God, I get up there in these white spaces and I think, oh, somebody's gonna rumble me. Yeah, we all do. But I think imposter syndrome is better than entitlement. I think I've told a lot of people, you know, that basically you've got all these leaders nowadays, you know, the Trumps and Erdogans and the Modis and the Bolsonaros and all of that lot, very toxic masculinity. This sort of I can rule, Putin, why did I forget Putin? It's all this kind of I was born to rule, whereas I think you always need to be a bit humble about it and think, what right have I got to be here? You have to deliver something, you have to make space for people, and you have to represent people and make open doors. And that's what it's about, and that's what, to me, 100 years of change has meant, that Leicester is going on. You know, the job's not finished, more doors to be open, but I think it's promoting that kind of dialogue. Oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, lockdown, Wandsworth Black Lives Matter, Tooting Common, June 2020. And I think a lot of this dialogue was opened up over the death of George Floyd, and also the murders of Sarah and the Smallwood sisters and Sabina Nessa, and you know, we just suddenly realized that the job is not done, and there's a huge amount of opening up of a dialogue about equality because of lockdown, I think. But what reasons to be cheerful, it is International Women's Day, so we mustn't forget that Black Lives Matter was founded by 3 wonderful women, Opal Tometi, Alicia Garza, and Patrice Calloz. And they, in 2013, because of the murder of Trayvon Martin, they actually set up Black Lives Matter, and it's been a worldwide movement. So we must celebrate our women leaders today, I think, of all days. And also celebrate the positive shifts, because we've had a lot of toxic masculinity, but what about the positive feminist leaders that have risen in the pandemic? Do you know, of the 12 highest performing countries in the world, 7 of them were run by women during the pandemic. The ones that put a lid on the spread, locked down fast, had the most collaboration and cooperation of their populations, and the most trust between politicians and the populace, were led by women. You know, in Denmark, Finland's got, you know, 4 top leaders, including the Prime Minister, all women. My favourite is the Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia. Have you seen her perform? Well, I think you should go online and have a look at some of the speeches she made to the COP26. Amazing stuff, you know, when she said, she just gave the Queen a notice and said, we're going to go independent, and she appointed Rihanna as her special ambassador for Barbados. Fantastic women. We have got so many women who are making waves around the world, and nobody's talking about them. You know, maybe people have heard of a Jacinda, yeah, but there are others. The president of Taiwan, she's another one who also has been incredibly influential and led her country through the pandemic. So amazing stuff from our leaders. And I think there is still a bias. I don't know if you've seen this campaign all around the world. Break the bias, cut the crap, and let's start to think about how we are all biased in some way. And we all need to, this is a personal thing, we need to address our own biases and our own assumptions and not assume that people only have one identity, not assume that we have one identity, because it's that multiple, the joy, I think, is that multiple feeling and sharing of identity. I just want to read you just one little bit. I know I've gone over, but you know, this is my show, isn't it? So I need a drop of water for this. This is my final bit. Got to give it everything, right? Okay. I've been looking for a place to heal from the things I don't speak of, to deal with my rage and fear and depression. I've lived in a state of alert, fending off attack, preparing for attack. I've made decisions I don't want, deciding not to decide, seeking for ideas, hoarding things because I'm lost, afraid of losing myself because I'm still not found, still searching for a place to be safe, at home in my own body. 4 years later, I walked into a room full of mixed-race activists for the first time. I cried and I laughed. No need to explain what we are. We fall out, we argue, come together, support each other, family. Living with ambiguity is an art. Perhaps wholeness consists of holding many contradictory identities in your head at any one time. It's a life's work. Good luck. Thank you.